Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Scott Schell and I'm a specialist in the Germanic languages. I have a PhD in Germanic linguistics from UC Berkeley, an MA in linguistics from Wayne State, and a bachelor's degree in German. And if you would like to know about any of my other credentials, such as publications, talks, and so on and so forth, go ahead and visit my website at scottshell.net. All right, so before we go ahead and jump into the interview, I thought I would go ahead and give you some preliminary remarks and tell you all, for example, how I came across this stone. I think I got a lead on this stone probably around like January or February of this year. And really the only lead was a post on Twitter where someone had asked someone named Scott Walter what this stone meant. And it turns out that the person who asked Scott Walter was actually doing construction work on a house, and that's how he came across the stone. So when this person asked Scott Walter what this stone meant, he said that it didn't mean anything at all and that it wasn't necessarily a bad thing. I don't know if it would mean something and it is a good thing, or if it means something that's a bad thing. I'm not exactly sure what he meant by that. But furthermore, it does actually say something. It just doesn't say anything in modern English. And so what happened is that I contacted this plumber. I found his work email address online. Luckily, he responded to me, and he vaguely remembered being there, and he wasn't totally sure, but he reached back into his records a few years prior and found the address of this person for me and, the other contact information. And so I went ahead and called this person who found the stone. And she was just thrilled, that I had called out of the blue. Of course, she wasn't expecting the call because she just found this stone 30 years ago. And not only was I able to, tell her, hey, I study runology, but I actually also said, your stone says something. Would you like to know what it says? And so, she was very happy to hear that. And so I went ahead and drove out to New Jersey. As you saw in the beginning of this video, it was a hell of a trip trying to get from Chicago to New Jersey. I got caught up in a couple snow squalls. In the video, it was just I was just in a town outside of Coal Center, Pennsylvania. But I did make it to New Jersey in one piece. And my time there with the person who found the stone was actually a really memorable moment for me and hopefully for her too. So what this person did was actually more or less anglicized Old Norse. So this person used the Old Norse language, as you see here, Thor vigitasa runar, which is a common Scandinavian formula for may Thor bless these runes. After that, it then says vet et at ek hek vingamedial. And so there's actually a mistake there. It should be vet ek at ek hek vingamedial. And this is actually a reference to Odin hanging on the tree in the poem Havamal. However, what's interesting is that although the language is Old Norse, this person chose to use the Anglo-Saxon, or really like the Anglo-Frisian runic system, because you have the extended characters in this inscription too, like you see with the double K rune. And so it's like, okay, you have Old Norse and you have an Anglo-Saxon / Anglo-Frisian system being used. Who or why would someone want to do that? And so my preliminary thoughts are that it must have been from a Theodish group, especially since this person found the stone approximately 30 years ago. So chronologically speaking, that also just makes sense for the Theodish movements back then, especially around the areas of like New York and New Jersey and around those states. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and play the audio interview for you. This person did not want to be recorded via video, but this person did not mind if I recorded them with audio and uploaded it here to YouTube.
Well, it was given to me by a girl I worked with who found it in the woods, but it was a very big slab. And when I looked at it, I don't think she noticed it. She may have seen the other side. But I turned it over, and here were what I recognized as rune stones. Yeah. I said, wow. So I took it home, because I wanted to make sure it was going to be safe.
Did you know it was runes at the time?
I know what runes are.
Okay.
Yes, so I
you
knew
knew
that.
It right off the bat. Yeah.
But I didn't know how to get it translated, and I had several people actually who said, "Oh, I can get that translated for you." Mm-hmm. and then came back and said that they couldn't. Maybe it's because of the problem that you're having with the languages.
Yeah.
But I never got anywhere with it at all. And so it's been out there getting mossy
Yeah.
for the past 10 years, And I think I had given up hope to ever find out what it was. And then you called me.
Out of the blue. Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, and so the reason why they probably weren't able to translate it is because the people that, respectfully, maybe the people that this person was going to, maybe they knew about runes in some sort of like modern context, but yeah, it's not in modern English, and that's what probably threw a lot of them off. So the first part, it says Thor Vigi. I'll go ahead and write it down for you too after the discussion. But it says Thor Vigi Thessarunar. That's actually Old Norse. It's the quote unquote Viking language, and it says, "May Thor bless these runes." That's the first part. I'm sorry.
That's a common formula you see on Viking runestones.
Yeah.
That would be like a standard kind of opening.
An opening to follow.
Yeah, you also see it on. Thanks, Toby. Yeah, you also see that on like memorial stones where someone has passed away, and it's like so and so raises this stone in memory of someone, and then you'll see "May Thor bless these runes," and so it's just kind of so it's a pre-Christian formula in Scandinavia. So before the oncoming of Christianity, they were worshiping Thor and Odin and all these other Scandinavian or Germanic deities, and then that was a very common Viking Age formula. So they were kind of trying to make it sacred, bless the stone, basically. Mm-hmm. So funny enough, that's what's happening with that stone. But what's fascinating is the second half of the inscription. It says, Vetek atekek vingamediol. What is that, right? That's Old Norse. So that's the Viking language again. It's specifically a reference to Odin. And what happens is, in a poem called Havamal, Odin hangs himself on a tree to gain runic wisdom, or the knowledge of the runes. And when he does that, it says in English, "I know that I hung on a windy tree." So that's what the second part says. So it says, "May Thor bless these runes," and then it says, "I know that I hung on a windy tree." That particular verse is also why I think this is not a prank. I think it's probably just more in a sort of magical religious context, because that particular stanza that they cited, because that's actually from Havamal, it's from a book called the Poetic Edda. It's specifically there for like an initiation passage. So when Odin does this, he sacrifices himself to himself, he starves himself, he has no drink or anything for 9 nights. And then he has this sort of like vision where he gets these runes, and he understands the runic mysteries and everything. And so that is what's on your stone. You have "May Thor bless these runes," and then you have the other passage with Odin being referenced to.
Now, I'm remembering that Odin and Thor are synonymous.
No. Thor and Odin are two different gods.
Different.
Yeah. Two different gods. Depending on, which, myth you're reading, often Thor is referred to as the son of Odin, particularly in Snorri. But they're two separate deities, yeah. Thor is really known as this sort of like... he's known for a couple things. He's typically known as like this sort of god of lightning and thunder.
The hammer.
And he's associated with the hammer. You see that a lot in like the Marvel movies now, where he's associated with those things. But one function that he also had that's not depicted in the Marvel movies was he had the ability to bless things. So
using the hammer.
Yeah, he could touch it, or and say, I bless this object.
I bless it, and bong. That could be dangerous.
But there were even there are even attestations in this older mythic material where the hammer is brought in during a wedding feast, and it's Thor's hammer brought in for a wedding feast, and it's placed on the bride's knees, and it's supposed to help ensure fertility. So there's he has a fertility aspect, this particular god. He is associated, of course, with thunder and lightning, and he can also bless things with it too. Odin, on the other hand, is very different. Where Thor is kind of like this sort of god that's with the people. He's kind of like this... Yeah, he's kind of the guy that's more associated with the people. Odin is very kind of dark and ominous. He's a god that loves to cause war. not like the Marvel depictions at all. He's not a fatherly god whatsoever. And he's always pursuing esoteric wisdom. And so that's why you have that, that other verse there too. But
well, he likes to create war because the warriors that die then go to Valhalla, where they're basically continue training and become part of Odin's army for Ragnarok, for the end of the gods, basically. So basically they're being trained to fight with Odin. So he causes war to find the best warriors so that he can take them, because he needs them later.
It's even more complicated.
We're kind of just doing the basic sort of overview.
Scott, since the inscription is at the top and there's a lot of blank space at the bottom of the stone, do you think maybe they intended to continue the entire those two stanzas about Odin on the tree? Because it's a very famous stanza.
No, totally. I would say that they probably intended to finish it, because that is a really weird place to stop.
Right.
It's literally stopping in the middle of a stanza.
That's a question, like, where would they be going? Because it doesn't, like, what's that supposed to mean? It sounds like it's leading up to something.
So what this particular part means is there's a poem called Havamal, which is in a book called the Poetic Edda. It's kind of like this Viking material, simplistically put. And this particular scene is when Odin is sacrificing himself to himself, and he starves himself, and he doesn't drink anything for 9 nights, and then he has these sort of visions, and then he all of a sudden he sees these runic mysteries and these runic properties, because the word rune doesn't necessarily mean just letter, it can also just mean a mystery. So what's going on is that there's some sort of initiation in that poem where he's being initiated into these runic mysteries, and then he comes back, and then he's able to give runes to other people. He says, well, he doesn't say that he gave them. He actually says there are runes among specific people, and then he says, I carved some for myself, and so that's where that's coming from. It's very much in this sort of like weird magic religious context that's pre-Christian. Mm-hmm. So
why would somebody be in the middle of the Watchung Mountains and decide to put that on a stone? So
I have a theory, still trying to confirm it, but I think it was probably a result of somewhere between the 70s and 90s, but it's probably a result from a Theodish group, which this group of people were basically very interested in like reconstructing and almost reenacting a lot of Anglo-Saxon stuff. And the reason why I am convinced that it might be them is because where it says, I know that I hung in a windy tree, the rune system used there is Anglo-Saxon, but it should be the Viking Futhark. It's really weird. So they had to have intentionally done that. Like, maybe it wasn't them, but that's like, that's where I feel it came from.
But it's a modern carving.
It's a modern carving,
right.
Yeah. The modern carving, but it's still fascinating that they did it in Old Norse. Usually when I come across these things in the United States, it's in modern English.
I'm still not clear on how this is translated from the Norse into
English?
No, before the intermediate step and then into English. Why can't you translate directly from the Norse into English?
Oh, you can. What I meant was that you have to take the runes and then basically write like a letter equivalent. Yeah, like a Roman letter equivalent, and then you can translate into English. So that's all I meant.
Right. Yeah, for someone that knows the runes well, you just know, okay, that one is this sound, that one's this sound.
Yeah.
If you don't know them as well, you might have to change it to the Latin alphabet first, and then read it off. So it kind of depends on how well someone knows the script.
Yeah. Well, it's with any translation.
Yeah. It's similar to, for example, like if someone can read the Cyrillic script with Russian, if they know that well, they're not necessarily changing that into the Latin alphabet version of the words versus just reading the Cyrillic directly. But maybe if they don't know the Cyrillic alphabet well, they would have to transliterate it to make it easier for them to read.
Okay, so you mentioned to me also that you're a geologist. Can you tell them, the people who are going to be hearing this, can you tell them like what kind of stone?
It's in a red arcosic sandstone.
It's very specific. I love it. So good. So that also makes it easy to carve too, right? Because it's sandstone.
Yes. It's one of the 3 layers of rock that occur in this part of New Jersey.
So it's a native stone to this area?
Yes.
Okay. So we pretty much covered everything, I think. So we have the type of stone. We have where you found it. It was about 30 years ago. and you have the translation. Anything else? You said you found it on top of a hill, or your friend found it on top of a hill. Do you recall, because it's been out there for 30 years, do you recall the runes ever having a different color? Did anyone color them? Did you see like a red or anything like that?
No, I did not. They've recently gotten mossy. That's the moss is the past 5 years. But there's never anything in it. I think at one point I tried to make a rubbing.
Okay. Yeah.
But I didn't put anything into the engraving.
No, that's fine. Yeah, it's just that a lot of these runestones historically, in Sweden, so not the United States tradition, like Sweden and Norway, they would color the runes with like a linseed oil and like a red ochre. So they would have other types of pigments too that they would use, but red was very common. So that's why I figured it out.
But no, I don't recall seeing anything there at all. So.
Makes me wonder what else is up there now. All right, everyone. Well, that's pretty much all I wanted to cover with you today. Just to recap, we have May Thor bless these runes, and I know that I hung on a windy tree, or all of it in Old Norse, Thor vigi þessa runar, and then we have Vetek atakek vinga medial. So again, this was an inscription that was definitely used for religious purposes, and I'm quite glad that this person came across this stone and we can talk about it today. So this is just yet another American runic inscription, which can be dated to at least 30 years prior. Of course, it was probably carved there and it was there for some time, and then the person who found the stone found it and held on to it for right around 3 decades. So I do have a video coming out next week on another American runic inscription, right from New Jersey. I went right up to New York, and that inscription up there was phenomenal. I'm really looking forward to talking about it next week. But it was quite adventurous to get there, to say the least. So have some fun stories for you guys on that particular runestone. I mean, it is just nothing but magical. I love it. Where the inscription is, what the inscription says, the type of people that visit the place. It's really interesting. So I will talk to you all soon. Take care.